So reflex is an involuntary response to a sensory stimulus. For example, let's imagine that you have suddenly gone into your kitchen and suddenly you just picked up a vessel there. And we never know, was the vessel very hot or very cold. If it was very hot, as soon as you just pick up the vessel in few milliseconds, immediately what is your response? You will just drop the vessel down, leave the vessel and drop it down. Whatever this action, what you are doing, this is happening involuntarily. Immediately, your brain will calculate in milliseconds and it will analyze that whatever object you have touched is very hot and it can damage your skin and tissues. To protect your body, immediately it sends a response so that you just drop the vessel and your body is protected. Okay, so for any kind of this sensory stimulus where you are going to see an involuntary response is called a reflex. How is this possible? What is the mechanism behind this reflex? So the reflex action is produced with help of a reflex arc. Okay, so let us see what is reflex arc. Reflex arc, generally it can come as a question. It's an important question. So these are the components of a reflex arc. So it has 5 components, starting with the first one, that is the receptor. Next you have a nerve which is carrying this information from the receptor to the center. So that is going to be called the afferent limb. Okay, once this information reaches the center, so center constitutes the next component, and here we are going to get a response to another limb that is going to be called the efferent limb. So efferent limb is supplying the effector organ. Okay, so these are the components, the 5 components, starting from the receptor, afferent limb, center, efferent limb, and effector organ. You can just draw a simple line diagram like this and explain each component. Now, as you have learned in the previous classes that receptor are of many varieties. Earlier, it was believed that you have receptors for cold, you have receptors for hot, receptors which can find the pressure sensation, receptor which can find the vibration sensation, receptors for pain, receptors for touch. So for everything there was one particular specific receptor involved which gets activated when it gets stimulated by its particular stimulus. For example, when there is a vibration sense, the vibration receptors get activated and they carry on the information and pass it on to the higher centers, going to the afferent limb, reaching the center. Now, the next thing is the center. It can be in the spinal cord itself. In some reflexes, we see the center is present at different places. We will be seeing that. Okay. Then immediately you are getting back a response, and we are seeing a response. Okay. So earlier, as I was telling, there was one receptor for every type of sensation. Now it is believed that majority of sensations are carried by free nerve endings. Earlier we thought free nerve endings carry only the pain sensation. Now it is believed that everything is carried by free nerve endings. Of course, this is all not come to the stage of a textbook, but for your exam purpose and for your viva or anything, it's better to stick to the textbook knowledge right now. But now it is believed that everything is through the free nerve endings. Okay, then next you have the afferent nerve, the center, the efferent nerve, and the effector organ. That's what we just saw now. You have a very important law here called the Bell-Magandi law. This is also very favorite question among the examiners, especially in your viva. It can come for 2 marks also. So what does this law states? It states that the dorsal or posterior root entering the spinal cord is sensory, and the ventral or anterior root. Okay, I can hear some people talking. Can you all of you please mute yourself?
ನೋಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅದಕ್ಕಂದಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಪೀಡಿಯಾಟ್ರಿಕ್ಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್ ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಎಷ್ಟು ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ನೋಡಿ ಅವಳು ಏನೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳೋದು ಶರತ್ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಅವ್ರು ಏನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರು ಹಂಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
Okay, let's continue. So Bell-Magander law, it tells that the dorsal or posterior root entering the spinal cord is sensory, and ventral or anterior root emerging from the spinal cord is motor. What is the meaning of this is all the signals which are entering the posterior part. Okay, so this entire posterior part is sensory, whereas the response which you are coming to the ventral or the anterior part, it is going to be the motor. Okay, so that's what the Bell-Magander law states. The dorsal horn is going to be the sensory component, the ventral horn is going to be the motor component. Next is the classification of reflexes. So now there are various classifications. First is based on the number of synapses. Before proceeding any further, just let me interact with a few people. Abhishek, can you please unmute yourself and tell me what is Bell-Magendy's law? Abhishek, can you hear me? Okay, there are a couple of Abhisheks. Abhishek, you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes, man, Abhishek.
So
So what is Bell-Magendy's law?
it states that the dorsal or posterior root entering the spinal cord forms the sensory cord. So
Very good. Sensory component, yes.
the ventral or the anterior, which is leaving the spinal cord, forms the motor part.
Good, very good. Fine. Thank you, man. Thank you. You can mute and steer back. So let us learn about the classification now. Based on the number of synapses present in a pathway. For example, when we go back here, see in this pathway, in this reflex arc, how many synapses are there? There's only one synapse. There's only one synapse present here. So this is called a monosynaptic reflex. So my monosynaptic reflex, only single synapse. Example of this is a stretch reflex. Okay, so we will be learning in the next reflexes class about individual reflexes, how the stretch reflex works, how inverse stretch reflex works. So all these reflexes, each and every specific reflex is a 5-mark question that we will be learning in detail in the next class. Okay, today it's more of just a general classification and all other things. Next is a disynaptic reflex. Now what does it mean? Two. So there are two synapses in the reflex pathway. So example for this is inverse stretch reflex. If there are more number of synapses, so there it's called a polysynaptic reflex. So here there are more number of synapses. Example for this is withdrawal reflex and cross extensor reflex. This also I will be telling you in detail in the next class. Based on the development, next classification, you have two reflexes here. One is a unconditional reflex and conditioned reflex. So let us learn a little bit about these two. Unconditioned reflex, what is this? This is a reflex present from birth. It's an inborn reflex present since birth. Okay, let's say for example, a very small baby just recently born, and for that baby, if you just take a small, very small drop of honey and touch the baby's lips and tongue, immediately you will see the baby will start enjoying the taste and it will start licking the honey. Did any one of us teach the baby that you are supposed to do like this? No, it's come from birth. Okay, so such kind of reflexes which are developed from the birth is called an inborn reflex. Next is conditioned reflex. What is this? This is acquired reflex or a reflex produced by learning. Okay, so the conditioned reflex can be produced over an unconditioned response. One example they have given: thought of a favorite food produces salivation. Okay, let's say for example, what are they trying to tell here is maybe from past few years, maybe some 10-15 years, we have come across various places of corner houses, and as soon as you hear corner house, what do you remember? I don't know how many people go there, especially in girls. I think most of you will like the Death by Chocolate present available in the corner house. Now, what is our next response immediately as soon as we hear the word Death by Chocolate? Have you realized that slowly the salivary secretions has increased? Okay, so this is called an this reflex. You have set this reflex. Earlier we never know about corner house or Death by Chocolate. Okay, but now because we just liked it so much that we have developed a new reflex pathway, telling that as soon as you see and hear that word, immediately your mouth starts salivating. To simplify, what I can tell is, in other words, people who have not gone to Death by Chocolate, if I start telling that your mother has prepared your favorite food, especially for the hot nights. Suddenly, if your mother comes with favorite food, or if she tells, I'm preparing something for you, immediately there also we start developing that there we can notice that there is increased salivation. So this kind of a reflex is called a conditioned reflex. We have made this reflex. Okay. Based on this, I would like to share one small story. Okay, one student, what he did is he took this conditioned reflex concept. Okay, this is a very interesting story. Now, honeybees, they have a very special sense of smell. That is the reason they can travel kilometers together in search of flowers, because they get that fragrance of the flower, and immediately they go in search of that. They have very special sense of smell. Okay, now they use this concept. What they did is, so they took a honeybee, And immediately if you give a particular flower to it, immediately they notice that it will start to put its mouth outside, the proboscis. We call the honeybee's mouth, the tongue as proboscis. It used to put its tongue or the proboscis out, trying to take in the nectar. Okay, so what now they did is, this person, he took the smell of certain material which are used to manufacture a bomb. To manufacture a bomb. Okay, so what he did is, first he gave the honeybee the smell of a bomb, immediately followed by giving the flower. Okay, so now what happened? Honeybee learned that whenever it gets the smell of a bomb, it has learned that next it is going to get the flower. This is what honeybee understood. So this is what a conditioned reflex he has made. Okay, now you know what he has prepared now? He has prepared the most cheapest bomb detector in the world. What it needs? Nothing. It just needs only 4 honeybees. He just took 4 tubes. He put 4 honeybees in all the 4 tubes. All the honeybees were trained that as soon as they get the smell of the bomb, they expect that flower is going to come and it is going to put its tongue out. Okay, this is a reflex he has set in now. Now what happens now? As soon as it gets the smell of the bomb, honeybee is going to put the tongue out. So what he did, these 4 honeybees were placed in small 4 test tubes. In front of the test tube, there was a beam of light passing through. Whenever this tongue passes out, this beam of light was cut. When the beam of light was cut, immediately he made a circuit telling that a light will glow. He just made a box, he covered it up, and your bomb detector is ready. You just take your bomb this device around. As soon as the honeybee senses the smell, it will put the tongue out. The beam of light is cut. Immediately, one light will glow outside. Okay, this is the most cheapest bomb detector he manufactured. 1 second, just hold on.
ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಸರ್ ನೋವರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಶುಯಲ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಖಂಡಿತ ನೋವರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಶುಯಲ್ಸ್ ಸರ್ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ನೋ ಕ್ಯಾಶ್ ನೋ ನೋ ಶರ್ಟ್ stop enough excuse me sir ಇನ್ನೂ ಒಂದು ಗುಟ್ಕು ಬಾಕಿ ಇದೆ ಅವಸರಿ ಮಾತಾನೆ ತಪ್ಪನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಅವನ ಪ್ರತಿ ಕುಟುಕಲು ಸಾಗಿದೆ
So that was the example of the bomb detector story. See, we never know. Such examples can, it may just look like a very normal slide for us, a normal concept for us. Okay, if you start thinking out of the box, and this person whom I was referring to, now he's a big millionaire now. He has detected this bomb detector device and is a big millionaire. Okay, so always keep your thoughts mind open. We never know what idea can develop at which point of time. Okay, let us continue. Next is the clinical classification. This is what is more important for us as a doctor, because tomorrow you are going to elicit all these reflexes on a patient, and these are going to give us a lot of information regarding the presence of lesion at which particular place. Okay, I have seen that doctors present in demands, they take one CNS case for nearly 3 hours. 3 hours they spend to examine one case. The CNS cases are so specific, so pinpoint, that with this, after at the end of 3 hours, you can exactly tell, okay, the lesion at this particular space in the CNS. For example, you can tell, okay, there is a infarct in the internal capsule, or there is an infarct in the nucleus of one particular thing. Like exact specifically, you can tell. There's no need to do any very costly MRI or any other procedures. Maybe that can be done just for a confirmatory purpose. But if you really examine the patient with all the appropriate just hand techniques, you can pinpoint the location. Okay, so like this, the clinical classification, you have the superficial reflex and the deep reflex and the visceral reflex. So examples for superficial reflex, you have the conjunctival reflex, corneal reflex, plantar reflex. Okay, so actually if you were here, reflexes is one of your practicals where you will be doing all these things. In conjunctival reflex, what you will do is you will take a cotton, make a small wisp and touch the conjunctiva, and the immediate response is your eyelids are going to blink close. Okay, so that is the conjunctival reflex. Plantar reflex, I have a video, I'll be showing you in the next class. Similarly, the deep reflexes. In this, you have the biceps jerk and the triceps jerk, knee jerk. Okay, all this also we use knee hammer and try to elicit all these reflexes. We will try to show all these videos very shortly if the lockdown is still not down. Okay, then you have the visceral reflex, you have the micturition reflex and the defecation reflex. Next is the functional classification. In this, you have the somatic reflex if there is involvement of somatic nervous system. It is autonomic reflex if there is involvement of autonomic nervous system. For example, here they have given gastrocolic reflex. I think in GIT class you have learned this. What is gastrocolic reflex? Very nicely seen in newborn babies. If you see any newborn baby, what you'll be noticing that the baby drinks mother's milk, and immediately this reflex get elicited, and immediately there is passage of stools. Okay, again the baby is hungry now, again it will drink milk, again there is stimulation of this reflex, again it passes stools. The cycle keeps on repeating. So this is called a gastrocolic reflex. As we grow, as the baby grows, this reflex slowly disappears. So that is the reason we generally don't have this problem. But sometimes you will be seeing this in your in some elderly people also, maybe your aunts or anybody. You will be noticing that morning, as soon as they get up, till they drink their coffee, they cannot pass out their stools, because they have developed a reflex that only when they drink coffee, the stools, the bowel will get evacuated. Okay, so that is the reflex they have developed. Okay, anyway, next classification is anatomical classification. This is based on the where the center is present. If you remember the first diagram what I showed you on the reflex arc, where was the center? center was in the spinal cord. Okay, so that we call it as the spinal reflexes. If the center is in the cortex, we call it as cortical reflexes. If the center is in the cerebellum, we call the cerebellar reflexes. Like that, depending on where the center is, these reflexes are classified. So you have the midbrain reflex, medullary reflexes. Another classification, physiological classification, you have the flexor reflex. Example of this is withdrawal reflex. Same example, when you touch some very hot object, let's say if this reflex is not there, what will happen? You will not flex your hand only. You don't take away your hand from injurious stimuli. You will continue to extend your hand and hold your hand near the injurious stimuli. Okay, so this withdrawal never happens. So this is called the withdrawal or the flexor reflex. Extensor reflex. These reflexes are again very important for our walking. They are also called the anti-gravity reflexes. Moving on to the next thing, it's the properties of reflexes. These properties of reflexes and properties of synapses are very similar. So this is going to be like a revision for you. Concept remains same and small changes. Okay, first property is the delay. So here, what is this? There is a time interval between the application of stimulus and onset of the response. This is known as the delay. Why is this delay? Once you apply once there's application of stimulus, response will happen after maybe few milliseconds, sometimes very microseconds also. Okay. So why is this? Because it takes time. It takes time for the. I think you have learned all the mechanisms. What is happening at the synapse? You have even the potential has to travel through the afferent pathways, reach the center, efferent. It takes some time. For that reason, there is going to be a small delay. Okay. One-way conduction. So conduction of impulse occurs in one direction. So conduction is towards the center in the afferent limb. So that is centripetal, means it is going to the center, and it is away from the center in the efferent limb. It's coming out of the center, that is in the centrifugal direction. Summation. I think this is all revision for you now. A reflex action is capable of being summated. So when summation is related to the time, it is known as temporal summation. Okay. In this condition, what happens here? In temporal summation, what is happening? It is related to the time. So what happens here? Successive stimuli are given one after the other with a very short time interval between each of them at the same point. So what is happening here? You are giving a stimulus at the same point at two different point of time. When you give very small interval and you stimulate the same point. Okay, so this is the temporal summation. So the effect of second stimulus potentiates the action of first stimulus to produce a better response. If the summation is related to the space, it's called the spatial summation. What's happening here? Two stimuli are given simultaneously close to each other. Okay, so you're giving at two different points now, but same time. So this is called the spatial summation. So what happens? Each of the stimulus will add up to give a summated response. Occlusion. So simultaneous stimulation of two nerves sharing a common neuronal pool produces a response, but here the response obtained would be less than the sum of two individual responses. This occurs as a result of overlap of two neurons. I think this also you have learned in the previous class, where sometimes what happens if you stimulate particularly, for example, nerve A, you are going to get a response of 10. Okay, you're going to stimulate nerve B, again you're going to get a response of again 10. But if you stimulate A and B together, you will suddenly notice that instead of getting 10 plus 10, 20, you have got only 15. Why is this happening? Because a few neurons are supplied by both A and B. Both are supplying them. So what happens? It gets occluded. both the responses. What is our final thing? We should get one response. So even though both A and B are stimulating, we are getting one response. That's how we see that instead of getting 10 plus 10, 20, we are getting 15 when we are stimulating two nerves. So this property is occlusion. Adequate stimulus. So the reflex response is obtained only when a precise stimulus for a given reflex activity is applied. What is the meaning of this? So for a particular reflex, only if you give a precise stimulus, then only it is going to respond. Otherwise, you are not going to get any response there. For example, let me take an example of the receptors in the eye, the rods and cones. For them, what is the best stimulus? Light is the best stimulus. Okay, so whenever it gets light, it is responding to it, and that is how we are able to see it. Okay, but let's imagine that you are in a real very dark place, no light at all. Even with that, even now also you can try. If you just close your eyelids, and just with your index finger, just press on the eyeball. Close your eyelids and just press on the eyeball. You will see that some kind of image is actually getting produced. Now here what is happening? We are actually stimulating the rods and cones, but we are not giving the precise stimulus what it is supposed to receive. Instead of giving light, we are giving a stimulus of crude touch. Okay, so it is giving a response, but the response is not the best response. Okay, so that's what this is telling about adequate stimulus. Facilitation. Okay, so repeated elicitation of the reflex will increase the response. So this is called as facilitation. Subliminal fringe. Okay, this is also again see, in this property anything can come as a question. It can come as a 2-marker question, or sometimes properties of reflexes as together it can come for a 5-mark question. Subliminal fringe is also one of them favorite questions in the Viva also, as well as in the theory paper also. So what is the subliminal fringe? So stimulation of a reflex pathway increases the excitability of associated pathways. Okay, as the associated pathway is partially stimulated, it can be activated easily. This increased excitability of the associated pathway is subliminal fringe. Okay, to simplify it, I'll just draw a small diagram. Okay, let's imagine that now we have one nerve here, okay, and this nerve, let's say I'm sending branches like this. Okay, now what is going to happen is this nerve, this is going to stimulate this one neuron, another neuron here, another neuron here, another neuron here. Okay, similarly we'll have one more nerve. Okay, I'll just draw like this. I'm having one neuron here, one here. Okay, now what is going to happen is okay, we are having some small overlap also. Okay, now let's say I stimulate neuron, I'll mark this A and I will mark this B. If I am stimulating this neuron A, now if you notice here, okay, let me change color. I'll go to the white one. Okay, if you notice here, see, look at these two neurons. These two neurons, they are actually getting signal from both A and B. Okay. Now, when I stimulate this neuron A, I am going to get a definite response from these ones. This one. I'm going to get a definite response from these ones. Okay. Neurons in the peripheries, in the ending, these ones. Okay. What may happen to these neurons is that even though when you stimulated, these neurons also got excited, but they never reached the threshold level. Action potential will develop only if the membrane potential crosses the threshold level. For these neurons, it may not reach the threshold level. Okay, but for all these ones, it reached the threshold level and they produced an action potential, and you got a response. Okay, but these neurons, which are almost, they were almost a little, a very little stimulus, it will cross the threshold and it is going to produce a response. Okay, so these neurons which are in the fringe, these are called the fringe neurons. They are in the region in the peripheries with very little, almost an excited state, and little stimuli is going to stimulate them. Okay, so this is called the subliminal fringe. So if you read the sentence again, stimulation of a reflex pathway increases the excitability of the associated pathway. As the associated pathway is partially stimulated, it can be easily activated. They are talking about this. This is partially stimulated and they can be easily activated. A little stimulus is going to get a response. Okay, so this increased the excitability of the fringe neurons. Associated pathway is called the subliminal fringe. Okay. Next is irradiation. So when the strength of the stimulus is gradually increased, the central excitatory state spreads. Impulses in the spinal cord, they spread to the segments above and below the level of activation. Hence, greater number of nerve fibers and additional groups of muscles take part in the reflex response. This is called as irradiation. Best example for this is I will be showing a video in the next class where during when you're trying to elicit the plantar reflex, normal response is going to be an adduction and flexing of, there is going to be the plantar flexion of the toes. In abnormal response, which is called the Babinski sign, there is going to be a dorsiflexion and fanning of the toes. But if this is very strong, like what can happen is the person not only happening this reflex at the foot, you will be seeing that the person will flex his leg at the knee also, trying to take away his leg from the stimulus, whatever you are trying to give. This is called irradiation, meaning when you are increasing the strength of the stimulus, it can spread to the segments above and below the level of activation. Habituation. When a non-injurious stimulus is applied repeatedly, intensity of the response decreases or it may even stop. This is called habituation. On the other hand, if an injurious stimulus is applied repeatedly, it causes intensification of the response. This is known as sensitization. Okay. This also, again, I think we'll be learning. There is one very famous experiment where what happens is they take a small rat and put in a cage, and they will take one electrode and they insert this electrode directly into the brain. In brain there are two centers, which is called a reward center. Another one is called a punishment center. Okay, so when in first case, when they take this electrode and they put it into the reward center, and they will just leave it there in the cage, and in the cage they will give one small not a small, quite a big red button. The small rat, initially it will be just going around the cage. Suddenly it will notice this red button. Now what it will do, it will go and press the red button. Whenever it presses the red button, it is going to get a stimulus, and the stimulus is going to go and stimulate the electrode, which is inserted into the reward center. Now what happens when it presses the button? it is getting a stimulus to the reward center. Whenever you stimulate the reward center, you will feel very happy. You feel so nice about it. So what the rat will do, it felt very nice about it. It again went one round in the cage, again it came back and again it pressed the red button. Again it's feeling very happy now. The response is becoming more stronger and stronger. Okay, what it will do, it will go to an extent where it won't even go around the cage, it will just stand to the next red button, it just keeps on pressing it. Every time it presses, it feels very happy. Okay, if you take the other condition where you take this thing and you put the electrode in the punishment center. Okay, so same rat, leave it there only. First time it will just go around, it will see the red button, it will press the red button. Immediately it gets a stimulus to the punishment center. It will start feeling so bad that next time also by chance, okay, it will go around and again it may press the red button. But after that it will realize if you press the red button, it is going to create a lot of problem to it. Okay, it will get so much, the rat gets so much scared that it won't even go near the red button. Tries to stay away from the red button. Okay, you're going to learn about this in the upcoming classes in little more detail. Swimmer properties, inhibition and after discharge also this happens due to the internuncial neurons. I think this we will be teaching you more in when we go to the cerebellum topic. So conditioned reflex, I told you already, the bomb experiment. So this is a learned or acquired reflex by experience. So conditioned reflex always develops on the basis of a unconditioned reflex. Okay, in that honeybee experiment, what was unconditioned reflex? Whenever it gets the smell of the flower, it will put its tongue out, thinking that nectar, it can take the nectar. That's unconditional reflex. So we have paired this one with the smell of the bomb. So we have paired with the unconditional to conditional reflex. So about the conditioned reflex, the speed of development is very quick. An unconditioned stimulus must accompany or precede the conditioned stimulus. It can be established or abolished. Okay, it is not transmitted by heredity, of course. Now almost we are at the end of the class. One very small, very important concept called the muscle spindle. Okay, all these days you have learned so much about the process of muscle contraction, the muscle fibers. So in muscle, when you take a muscle, there are actually two types of fibers. One, you have the extrafusal fibers. The other one is the intrafusal fibers. Whatever you learned all these days is about the extrafusal fibers which are involved in the contraction process. Now we are going to learn about the intrafusal fibers. What is this intrafusal fibers? So in the muscle spindle, this is a fusiform structure consisting of about 10 muscle fibers called the intrafusal fibers enclosed in a connective tissue. So this muscle spindle is going to act like a sensor in the muscle. It is going to sense the changes happening in the muscle. How we have the baroreceptor sensing the changes happening in the pressure, changes happening in the muscle is sensed by this muscle spindle. So this is going to be a receptor or a sensor in the muscle. Okay, they act as a receptor organ for mediating stretch reflex, and these fibers are oriented parallel to the extrafusal fibers. Okay, when you say, okay, see this is a diagram, muscle diagram here. So these are the muscle, yeah, muscle belly. You can see the tendon through which it is attached to the bone. You can see here that they have just shown one small structure here. So that is the muscle spindle. Okay, so muscle spindle they have enlarged and they have shown it here. So it is enclosed in a connective tissue sheath and they are arranged in parallel. So this is the extrafusal fibers. These are the extrafusal fibers and these are the intrafusal fibers. Here also there are two types now. If you notice, you can see in one variety all the nuclei are accumulated in the central portion. Because all these nuclei are accumulated in the central portion is a little bit bulged. compared to the tapering ends in the peripheries. Okay, so this central portion here, this is called the nuclear bag fibers. Okay, it's like a bag here, all the nucleus present here. Okay, so look at these fibers, all the nucleus is arranged one behind another like a chain. So this is a chain of nuclei arranged. So this is called what? Nuclear chain fibers. Okay. Even when you look at the nerve being supplied here, you will see that for the nuclear bag fibers, whatever the nerve is coming, okay, it is forming a spiral around it. Okay, so this is called as annulospiral ending. Annulospiral ending. Look at this fiber. This fiber, which is supplying um, the nuclear chain fibers, you can see that it comes and it spreads like a flower. So this is called the flower spray ending. Annulospiral ending, flower spray ending. Okay. Now, when you look at this picture, do you notice something very special here? Okay, for this I will ask someone to unmute yourself and tell me that what special are you noticing here? Look at the diagram for 15-20 seconds. Abhinav? Can you unmute?
Yes, sir.
Abhinav, what is something special you see in this muscle spindle?
Something special.
To just give a clue for you, what is a muscle spindle? It's a receptor. It's going to sense the
Yes,
changes happening and it's trying to inform the brain.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you can see the nerves also, which is taking the information to the brain. Anything else you see? Look at this region. Not only information is carried from these receptors to the brain, we are getting some signals back from the brain to the receptor. You can see here that this is the motor nerves. So this is the only receptor in the body which is having a sensory supply as well as a motor supply. Okay, Abhinav, yeah, you can mute yourself, Abhinav. Thank you. Okay, so when you look at this, the motor supply, you can see the gamma fibers. These gamma fibers are coming and they are supplying the muscle spindle. So you can see the gamma fibers, they are coming and they are supplying the muscle spindle. Okay, but here if you see, these are the extrafusal fibers. Extrafusal fibers getting now supply of the alpha motor neurons. Okay, that's what you have learned in the previous classes. Alpha motor neurons you have heard in so many times. That is supplying the extrafusal fibers. Here you have the gamma motor neurons, which is supplying the muscle spindle. So this is the only receptor in the body where you are having a sensory supply as well as a motor supply. Application of this we will be learning in the upcoming classes. This is a very important concept here. Right now I have just given you the introduction to the muscle spindle. Application of the muscle spindle we will be learning a little later. Okay, so yeah, I have told all these things. Having the sensory innervation, primary is the annulospiral endings, secondary the flower spray endings, motor innervations, the gamma efferents, Okay. So about the dynamic response and static response, you will be learning in the upcoming classes. And yeah, I will stop at this particular point of time. And from this slide, we will be continuing in the next class. Okay. And I'll be sending you the today's assignment also. You can just fill in the assignment. Okay, any queries? If anybody is having any doubt, you can unmute yourself and you can ask me.
So I have a doubt.
Yes, Amarish.
So, you told the muscle spindle has like also a motor supply which is peculiar. What is the reason behind that?
Yeah,
Is it
that
for
only. That we will going to teach you, man. That we are going to teach you in the upcoming classes. It's going to play a very important role. That it is sometimes when the muscle is contracting, I think we will teach you. If I tell now without the diagram, it may be a little difficult for you to understand. We will tell you in the upcoming classes. It will come.
okay, sir?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, ma.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rakshita.
Hello?
Yeah, Rakshita, I can hear you.
Yes, just like in a synapse, will there be sensitization to noxious stimulus for a reflex?
Yeah, it can happen.
Okay.
It will be there. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I hope even I think this is the first time I have taken a class through the online platform. Hopefully, all of you have understood. Of course, we cannot get the real feel of a live class, what we directly communicate. Anyways, since especially for that, our institutional innovation council students. I'm very sorry that still we're not able to proceed any further because of so many other reasons. Anyway, still we have a long journey. You are going to stay with us for the next 5 years. So let's see if we can do some progress. But that example of this bomb detector is really encouraging. How we can come up with the concepts, such a very simple concepts in the class, and we can make it bigger. Anyway, thank you everyone for attending the class, and shall we end the class now? So I think if there are any doubts, you can ask me, or I'll just end the meeting.